Yeah, this was bad. What's up, everybody? My name's Robert Schmitz, and while I originally wanted to do a 5 plays of the game video about this Week 1 loss the Bears suffered to the hated Green Bay Packers, the game was such an enigmatic disappointment that I figured we'd just call it exactly what you want to know. What just happened? For those of you somehow unfamiliar with Thursday night's result, the Chicago Bears, who had spent an entire offseason being lauded by local writers like myself, lost their home opener to their bitter rivals, the Green Bay Packers, 10-3, in a game that featured both an awesome defensive performance, which we will get to, Bears fans, and a catastrophic offensive performance that left plenty of Bears fans, myself included, very worried going forward. The trouble was, though, that nobody could really agree on whose fault the offensive issues were. I mean, the Bears only scored 3 points, so somebody has to be at fault, right? Was it Mitchell Trubisky, the quarterback, head coach and de facto offensive coordinator Matt Nagy, or the offensive line? All 3 of these had major roles to play in the Bears' offensive issues on Thursday night, so I decided that I'd take my usual slot of 5 plays of the game and turn it into a detailed breakdown of all 3 of these players and position groups, so that not only could we figure out just why the Bears were so bad on offense on Thursday night, but also what we should expect from them going forward and whether or not these issues are fixable. Now, I am going to throw up a disclaimer here because this is going to be a primarily critical video. We're going to talk about Trubisky, we're going to talk about Nagy, we're going to talk about the offensive line, and trust me when I say we're not going to be talking about their highlights. This is going to take a strong stomach for both you and me, but if you're prepared to listen to it, I'm prepared to tell you exactly what I saw. So without waiting any longer, let's dive right into it. So early in the game, in fact, the Bears' first third down they faced, Mitchell Trubisky dropped back and jetted forward to pick up the first down with his legs. Once they showed the replay, it became clear to me that Trubisky knew that these 2 crossing routes were going to grab the attention of the linebackers and knew that he had a seam if he just took off exactly when he did. This seemed like a very smart play, and I was so excited. Trubisky's finally got total command of the offense, I remember thinking, and I thought this game was going to go so well from here. Oh boy, was I wrong. Just 2 plays later, in fact, Trubisky makes the wrong read on a read option shovel pass play that Nagy loves where he has got to give the ball to Ben Braunecker. Seriously, check out Brauneker's lane here. This is wide open real estate and exactly what Nagy wants. Instead, Trubisky hesitates and this leads to a very short gain. I highlight this play because it's the first bad read or bad decision that Trubisky makes in this game, and unfortunately, it certainly wouldn't be the last. In fact, throughout the entire first half, I didn't see Mitchell Trubisky move off of his first read one time. He would consistently stare down a single receiver, and whether they were open or not, he was throwing them the ball. This tendency isn't actually new to Trubisky either, as even in good games last year, like his game against Tampa Bay, showed him throwing to the first player he saw. The difference, of course, between Tampa Bay and this Green Bay game was that last year, those receivers were open, whereas in this Green Bay game, they were often not, and he needed to move off of that first read to find open men elsewhere. I'll be honest, Bears fans, there were a lot of examples that I had to pick from when I wanted to show you just how bad this tendency can be, but there's simply no better example than Trubisky's third down crossbody throw to Patterson that should have been picked off. You may have been able to spot this the first time, but if we back this play up to the point where Trubisky's right about to throw it, you can see that he's basically got 3 options on where to go with this football. He can throw it to Allen Robinson, who's breaking open over the middle. He can use Charles Leno as a blocking shield against Preston Smith and try to win a foot race around the edge. Or, and the third option that he chooses, he can keep his eyes on Cordero Patterson the entire time and throw a dangerous crossbody throw that almost gets intercepted, and frankly, should have been. This play was originally pointed out by Brett Coleman, and while I wish I could have picked another play, it was the best example, bar none, because Mitch should never make this crossbody throw, and Patterson just isn't open. But to make sure it's clear just how bad Mitch's single read tendency was on this night, I'll show you another play. This time, his dangerous 3rd and 14 throw that he never should have made to Allen Robinson. So first things first, let's be clear. The The Bears are in 3rd and 14, and it's going to be a tough down to pick up either way. But of course, being that they're on their own side of the 50, the last thing they need is a turnover or to force a bad ball. And that's exactly what Mitch Trubisky does on this play. The Bears are running a deep curls concept, meaning that Patterson, Robinson, and Gabriel are going to run out to basically the first down line, turn around, and wait for the throw. The Packers, on the other hand, are basically dropping a ton of defensive backs and linebackers to that line to gain to try to stop the Bears from doing, well, pretty much that. The trouble here is that Mitch Trubisky locks in on Allen Robinson from the jump and does not take his eyes off his favorite receiver, even when Darnell Savage starts creeping over to intercept the throw well before Trubisky even releases the ball. I'll be honest, I don't know if there was anybody particularly open on this play because, as you can see, Cordero Patterson looks pretty well bracketed on that right-hand side, Robinson is obviously covered, and the openest guy we get is Gabriel, whose safety seems like he's bailing backwards at the moment. But regardless, Trubisky cannot throw it to Robinson here, and he almost pays for it with an interception. Not good. Not good at all. And while I could go on, I'll stop there because, simply put, we've just got to move on for time's sake. The bottom line is that Mitchell Trubisky's first half was abysmal, primarily because he did not read the field well at all, failed to find open receivers, and was a huge part of why the Bears were only able to muster up 3 points in this first half. But see, here's where things get interesting, because if the game was only 1 half long, we would have left it saying that Matt Nagy called up a decent game and the offensive line and Trubisky weren't able to execute it. But the game isn't 1 half long, it's 2 halves long, and the halftime adjustments that Coach Matt Nagy seemed to make were confusing in the least and infuriating in the worst. Here you have a quarterback in Mitch Trubisky that is clearly struggling to read the field. So what do you decide to do coming out of the second half? You decide to throw, and throw some more. Nagy called 3 designed runs in the first 2 offensive series, and after that, passed the entire rest of the game away. Yes, that's 33 straight passing calls. And surprise, surprise, the Bears ultimately didn't score again. Now, some of this was due to Mitch Trubisky pulling RPOs that he should have given away to the running back, like this 3rd and 1 play here where he should have given the ball to David Montgomery, and another one later in the 4th quarter that he shouldn't have given away to Mike Davis. But while Nagy said that we've quote-unquote gotta give him the run-pass balance thing because of these RPOs, Nagy didn't call near as many RPOs as he seemed to suggest. Most of those 33 passing plays were indeed passing plays the whole way, so that run-pass balance qualm that many have about Nagy, that is very real, and it's totally on him. Also, and this is a bit speculative, but I do think that Nagy's calling card of having a ton of formations and a ton of personnel packages actually did more damage to the Bears than it did help the Bears. According to Dan Durkin, writing for The Athletic, Matt Nagy deployed 32 unique personnel packages in only 73 offensive plays. And you could tell this generated some confusion for the Bears because they took 2 huge delay of game penalties in arguably their most important drive of the game, the one that ended in that 4th and 10 baffling decision that we just don't need to go over because in my opinion, it was absolutely indefensible. Regardless, the drive started strong with Mitch Trubisky throwing a 1-read strike to Allen Robinson on his back shoulder that was positively beautiful. Really nothing to complain about on this play. But immediately afterwards, when the Bears go to line up for their second play of the drive, they find they've only got 10 men on the field, and Nagy chooses to take a delay of game instead of costing a timeout. That decision isn't necessarily a bad one, especially given that the immediate next play after that, the Bears converted on this sweet seam throw to David Montgomery. Good throw, Trubisky, great catch, Montgomery, but it's certainly worrisome that the Bears seem to be so confused, especially since only a couple plays later, after Trubisky threw this ball that fell incomplete to Allen Robinson down the sidelines, the Bears were caught on 3rd and 5, taking another delay of game because they just couldn't get themselves situated. This obviously led directly to Nagy's decision on 4th and 10, and I think likely took points off the board for the Bears, and that is flat out unacceptable. If it happened just once, I might be willing to blame the player's poor execution, but since it happened twice, I pin it on Nagy. It seems like it's a coach problem, and he's got to get that figured out before our game next week against the Broncos. Whether he needs to simplify the offense, or even, and I'd prefer this, just pick a set of playmakers you like David Montgomery, Allen Robinson, Taylor Gabriel, Anthony Miller, Tariq Cohen, and whatever tight end you like at the time, and put them on the field consistently. While I know Cordero Patterson and Mike Davis certainly have roles in this offense, stick to simple things that your players can execute. Hopefully that'll help you avoid delay of game penalties like the ones that we saw, and maybe even help Trubisky execute a little bit. I don't want to make this sound like Trubisky was somehow flawless in the second half. He certainly made his fair share of mistakes, the most notable of which being the basically game-ending interception he threw to Adrian Amos into double coverage that Amos had read the entire way because, once again, Trubisky picked his receiver in Allen Robinson and never moved off him, but Matt Nagy certainly didn't help him out. And speaking of people that didn't help each other out, let's discuss our final offensive topic, the offensive line. And I don't have a ton of time to talk about them, so while I could talk about how the line was consistently reestablished in favor of the Packers, which probably drove Nagy away from the run, or talk about how the line took 4 penalties throughout the game, 3 of which were holding, and 2 of which that drove the Bears to the 1st and 30 that then pushed them back to the 1st and 40 after the OPI call on Gabriel, I'll just instead mention that the offensive line seemed to cave whenever the Bears needed them most. They allowed this nasty sack due to a miscommunication between Daniels and Long on the first 3rd down that the Bears failed all game. The 4th and 10 play we talked about earlier saw the line allow heavy pressure that effectively killed the play. And of course, there's the game-ending sack that sees Cody Whitehair fail to pick up a stunt as Preston Smith runs free at Trubisky and kills the play before Trubisky's able to leak the ball out to a wide-open Adam Shaheen. Overall, the Bears' offensive line did not have a good game on Thursday, and there's just no getting around that. It's also worth mentioning that Mitch Trubisky didn't exactly help his offensive line out either, as he had multiple plays like this where the pocket was perfectly fine and he'd either try to run out of it early and end up getting himself sacked, or just simply wouldn't slide to where there was room and pressure would get home that didn't have to hit him, but because he didn't move, it did. This doesn't excuse the offensive line's performance, but it's worth keeping in mind, because if a quarterback like Trubisky doesn't help his linemen out, even more pressure is going to affect the offense, and as we could see on Thursday night, it did. Between Trubisky's issues reading defenses and his poor performance in the pocket, Matt Nagy's rough halftime adjustments, occasionally baffling decision-making, and overall overcomplication of his offensive game plan, and the offensive line's general underperformance all throughout the game, I ultimately end up a little bit confused about just who to blame. But I'll try to sum it up right now for you. The offensive line was bad throughout the game, but that happens sometimes and you just have to deal with it. The biggest problem that I have, especially in that first half, is that the offense was basically inoperable as long as Trubisky wasn't able to read the field. That's a big problem, and as best he can, he's got to get a little bit better at least making a second read, or he's going to continue to struggle against good defenses for pretty much the rest of the season. While I do wish Matt Nagy had come out and made real halftime adjustments, especially committing to a ground game that, while it wasn't overwhelmingly successful in the first half, it would have alleviated some of the burden that Trubisky had on his shoulders, I ultimately know that no offense works if the quarterback doesn't execute it right, so most of the quote-unquote blame that I have is on Mitch, and he's got to get better. If I was going to break it down into percentages, I'd say about 50% of the quote-unquote blame falls on Mitch Trubisky, 30% on Matt Nagy, and the remaining 20% on the offensive line as a whole. But as a reminder, this is a team sport, and there's no getting around it. The Bears lost because Mitch Trubisky, Matt Nagy, and the offensive line combined to form the perfect storm of offensive suck that couldn't score more than 3 points against the Green Bay Packers. It's a darn shame, too, because it overshadows an absolutely immaculate defensive performance that was flat out amazing. I know there are plenty of Bears fans out there that think that Aaron Rodgers didn't look very good on Thursday night, and I beg to differ. There were tons of plays where Rodgers' subtlety in the pocket or the way that he would see pressure coming and just immediately start to escape and do whatever he could with the play that showed me that Rodgers was on his game. The Bears defense was just better. He milked that defense for every single point he could, and truly, all he was able to get was about 10 points, which seemed to come almost entirely from Deion Bush being on the field, both in the long throw that Rodgers made to Valdez-Scantling and in the shorter touchdown throw that Rodgers just put up for Jimmy Graham with Deion Bush in tight coverage and didn't care, and Graham just muscled him over for the touchdown. Not what you want to see from Bush, but everybody else made a play at some point. Pass rush went wild. Linebackers looked good. Everybody was tight in coverage. And besides those two plays that I just mentioned, this one where literally one receiver gets open by himself and a DPI to Roquan Smith, that was pretty much all the Bears defense allowed on Thursday night, which for 60 minutes of football is amazing in my opinion. Honestly, I could probably do an entire video dedicated to just how impressive I thought the Bears defense was against Green Bay's offense that night, making sure to highlight guys like Roy Robertson-Harris, Leonard Floyd, and HaHa Clinton-Dix that played phenomenally throughout the evening. But with the level of detail that we covered the offense's struggles, there's just not enough time in this video. So I'll close by saying this. Matt Nagy, Mitch Trubisky, and the whole rest of the Bears offense absolutely have to rebound next Sunday against a Denver team that is historically tough to play at home early in the season. It's a tough ask, no doubt, but if the offense can come out against Denver and score about 17 points, I think their defense should be able to lock down Flacco and the rest of the Broncos enough to walk out a mile high with a rare early September win. Given that the Bears will be facing their former defensive coordinator in Vic Fangio, I don't expect any of those 17-ish points to come easy, and that's exactly why I want to see Nagy, Trubisky, and the rest of the offense prove to us that they're able to score in tough situations. I don't want to overreact to a bad loss, and I certainly don't want to place too big of an emphasis on a Week 2 regular season away game that is historically hard to win, but this would be a great game for the Bears to show us something, and I certainly hope they do. That's all I have for you today, Bears fans. Thank you so much for hanging with me on a format that is less 5 plays and is more 4 important topics Robert thought were worth talking about. But if you like this video, be sure to give it a like and share it around. That's the only way that I'm going to grow and be able to make more and more content just like this, which is certainly something that I'd love to do. If you like what I have to say, be sure to follow me on Twitter at Robert K. Schmitz, where you'll see my instant reaction thoughts to anything happening throughout the Bears games, general other thoughts as I rewatch the game and start to put these videos together, and any other content that I put out. You will always hear about it on Twitter. I can pretty much guarantee that. Thank you so much for watching this video. Hopefully it answered a couple of your questions on Trubisky, Nagy, and the offensive line's performance in Thursday night's game. And until next time, bear down, and thanks so much for bearing with me.